The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty earth, when the sound of galloping hooves shattered the stillness of the late afternoon. A farmer, weary from a long day of labor, didn't notice at first. He was bent over the rows of corn, his hands suppressing weeds, eyes focused on the fruits of his hard work. That's when he heard it, the sharp clapping of hooves, growing louder, echoing like a drumbeat of impending danger. As he straightened, wiping the sweat from his brow, a knot formed in his stomach. He abandoned the weeds and squinted toward the horizon. Figures in the distance, dark silhouettes against the orange glow of the setting sun, were rushing toward him like shadows ripped from a nightmare. Bandits. The very word sent a chill down his spine. Tales of their ruthlessness had been whispered in every tavern, every marketplace. They were hungry wolves, feral and fierce, hunting for easy prey. He had heard the stories. Farmers robbed of their crops, families torn apart in moments of greed. Fear gripped him, but instinct kicked in. He couldn't run. He wouldn't abandon his land. For generations, this farm had been tilled by his ancestors. Each blade of grass, each corn stalk was more than just sustenance. It told a story of resilience. With a surge of adrenaline, he raced back to the barn, where the scent of hay mingled with the sharp tang of metal. His heart pounded as he unlatched the door, a flickering light from the setting sun illuminating the tools inside. He grabbed a pitchfork, its wooden handle worn but sturdy, a symbol of his hard-earned labor. This was not just a weapon, it was an extension of his will to fight back. Charging out of the barn, he could see the bandits, now 3 of them, on horseback, eyes glinting with greed. They were close enough that he could make out the sneers on their faces, the glint of steel at their sides. They leaned forward, spurring their horses faster, hungry for chaos. One of them shouted, and it wasn't long before they were closing in on him. But the farmer didn't waver. Instead, he planted his feet firmly on the ground, raising his pitchfork with defiance. This was his land, and he would not yield to them. The bandits laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the fields like a death knell. "Look at him." One cackled as they approached. Hand on the hilt of his sword, another bandit leaned dangerously close, eyeing the pitchfork like it was a toy. But the farmer didn't back down. Instead, he took a deep breath and prepared his mind. He knew that bravery was not merely the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And right then, courage bubbled within him like a thunderstorm ready to unleash its fury. The bandits steamed closer, their horses' hooves kicking up clouds of dust. As the first bandit lunged, attempting to swipe at him with a dagger, the farmer sidestepped, his movement an echo of grace born from years of tilting the earth. He thrust the pitchfork toward the bandit, jabbing at the horse's flank. The steed reared in panic, throwing the bandit off balance, and he tumbled into the dirt with a thud that echoed in the evening air. The other 2 bandits froze for a heartbeat, shocked at the sight of their comrade sprawled face down in the mud. But anger quickly replaced disbelief, and they charged forward, their desperation palpable. They moved as one, circling the farmer like vultures, but he could feel the fire igniting within him. He danced beneath their blows, channeling every ounce of his experience, the rhythm of planting, the swing of the scythe. He feinted left and dodged right, using the barn as a shield, its weathered walls a silent partner in his battle. With a calculated move, he swept low with the pitchfork again, this time aiming for the other bandit's horse. With a yelp, the stallion stumbled, galloping sideways and knocking its rider to the ground. For a fleeting moment, the realization washed over the farmer. He was in control. Adrenaline coursed through his veins. Each moment was now alive, electric. The remaining bandit advanced, sword glinting menacingly as he aimed for the farmer's head. But with each swing, the farmer whispered a prayer, trusting his instincts, evading each thrust with nimble footwork. And then, in a blur of motion, he countered. The pitchfork arced through the air, catching the bandit's arm, forcing the weapon clattering to the ground. The bandit howled, staggering back. In that instant, the farmer, now emboldened, lunged forward. This wasn't just a fight for his crops, it was a fight for his legacy. He pressed on, hurling the pitchfork with all his might. It embedded itself firmly in the ground near the fallen, sword unintentionally pinning the bandit to the spot, enough to halt his retreat. The first bandit, who had stumbled earlier, was starting to rise, shaking off dirt and humiliation. But the farmer wasn't done. He needed to show them the spirit of a man whose hands had bled for the land. He turned his attention towards the fallen bandit, kicking up dust as he charged, wielding the pitchfork like a spear. At that moment, luck seemed to tilt in his favor. The bandits exchanged fearful glances, their bravado faltering. Strength born of desperation can be a powerful motivator, but so can the fear of defeat. The remnants of their confidence began to unravel, frayed at the edges. The farmer shouted, his voice echoing across the field, deep and primal. "You think you can take from me?" Fear echoed in his voice. Not just fear from the bandits, but the fear he had long buried within himself. The fear of losing it all. In that moment of bravado, something shifted. Silence fell over the increasingly shocked bandits as the farmer stood tall, chest heaving, determination radiating from every fiber of his being. The air thickened with tension, like an electric charge before a storm. The bandit on the ground cursed under his breath, realizing he was at the mercy of the very man he underestimated. The one they thought was just a simple farmer had become a force, an unexpected storm to weather. The second bandit, clutching his shoulder, took a nervous step back. He called out, his voice shaky, the bravado cracked under pressure. The farmer boomed, and just like that, the fear gripped the hearts of the bandits. They were not the monsters in control. They were intruders in a world where bravery reigned. One by one, they turned to flee, galloping away on their horses, hearts thumping wildly in their chests. The farmer exhaled a heavy breath as the dust settled, watching their retreat with a mix of disbelief and triumph. He lowered the pitchfork, its once menacing stance reflecting the sunlight's dying glow, marking the end of an unlikely battle. As the last silhouette vanished off the horizon, relief washed over him, and he felt the weight of the world lift just a little. But not only relief, an unfamiliar sense of pride surged through him. He had stood firm against the tides of greed and violence. It was in that moment he understood something powerful. This wasn't just about the land. It was about standing up for one's own. It was about facing down the darkness that threatened to engulf him. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of purple and indigo, he felt transformed. The farmer walked back to his fields, steps lighter with every movement. This night would be different. It felt charged with purpose, with undying hope. He glanced back one last time, eyes drifting over the furrows in the earth, knowing he'd not just fought for his crops, but for every seed of resilience grown from generations past. The belief that courage can bloom from the heart of even the most humble farmer, standing tall against whatever storms may come, was now a story waiting to be told. In the embrace of dusk, whispers of the tale would echo through the fields and beyond, reminding everyone that the spirit of bravery knows no bounds, and even in the face of danger, one can always turn the tables. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, when the sound of hooves pounding the earth set a thunderous pulse in the quiet country air. A farmer, worn from a long day in the fields, felt a chill creep up his spine. It was a peculiar rhythm, one he had never heard before, urgent, relentless, and growing louder. He looked up, squinting against the glare of the setting sun. In the distance, 3 figures on horseback raced toward him, growing larger and more menacing with each heartbeat. These were no ordinary travelers. They were bandits, notorious in the tales told by crackling firesides. Harbingers of chaos, they had swept through towns, leaving nothing but dust and despair. Fear clenched his heart like a vice. Tales of their brutality flooded his mind, images of farmers robbed of their livelihoods, families torn apart by violence. But the farmer stood rooted, arms at his sides, fists clenched. He wouldn't run. This land was his birthright, tended with toil, sweat, and love. He breathed deep and quickly scanned his surroundings, looking for something, anything that could turn the tide. The bandits advanced, their wicked laughter ringing through the still air. "Look at him!" The jeering voices of mischief echoed, and the obvious disdain in their eyes stoked the fire of determination within him. They saw weakness, they saw vulnerability, but what they didn't see was the resolve stealing within him, turning fear into fierce defiance. Drawing from the depths of his courage, he sprinted toward the barn, heart racing. There, amidst the smells of hay and churned earth, lay tools that were far more than instruments of labor. They were now his lifeline. He grabbed a pitchfork, its wooden handle warm from the sun, its tines glistening. This was not just a weapon. It was a symbol of his fight against despair, a testament to generations of sweat and grit. The farmer emerged from the barn, hoisting the pitchfork like a knight wielding a sword. The shadows of the bandits loomed larger, their horses' hooves pounding the dirt in a thunderous dance of chaos. A momentary flicker of doubt grazed his mind as they closed in, but he suppressed it. He would not back down. He would make them regret this day. One taunted, sneering as he reached for his dagger. The farmer tightened his grip, eyes narrowing. He would not be a victim. He would not be a casualty. As the first bandit lunged, twisting his body to strike, the farmer stepped aside, a surge of adrenaline propelling him. With a swift jab, he aimed for the horse's flank. The animal reared, spooked by the sudden movement. The bandit lost his balance, tumbling off into the dust like a rag doll. The other two men paused, disbelief flashing across their faces. They were used to cowing weaker foes, not facing off against a determined spirit. Their hesitation was a gift that the farmer seized with both hands. He lunged forward, brandishing the pitchfork, ready to make them understand the price of their arrogance. The bandit who had wielded the dagger scrambled to his feet, fury replacing surprise. As they circled him, the farmer remembered something his father once taught him. Bravery was not merely the absence of fear, it was the mastery of it. He felt the surge of those words coursing through him. The remaining bandits charged, and in that harrowing moment, time slowed. The rush of the wind, the pounding hooves, and the palpable tension melded into a symphony of chaos. He danced beneath their assaults, feet agile, body honed from years of labor. With a wild thrust, he drove the pitchfork toward the second bandit's horse. The beast stumbled, sending its rider flailing into the dirt, and the thud resonated through the evening air. Silence fell for a heartbeat, the kind of silence that hangs heavy with uncertainty. For a moment, the unthinkable rose in the air. Could he actually win? The last bandit, seeing his comrades sprawled on the ground, doubt gnawed at him. Fear can be more powerful than blades, and the farmer witnessed it etching itself into the bandit's expression. The farmer, emboldened, pressed on. "Leave," he bellowed, his voice ringing out with thunderous authority. It was then that he recognized the true battle within an internal fight that mirrored the physical struggle unfolding. As the bandit hesitated, the farmer moved closer, tightening the pitchfork in his hands. Just as the bravado of the last bandit began to dissipate, something fierce kindled within the farmer. It was not just pride he fought for, but every seed that had been planted on that soil, every harvest that filled families' bellies, every child who had laughed in the meadows. The bandit, now cornered, took a frantic step back. His eyes darted, desperate for an escape, while the faces of the fallen comrades reflected the stakes of his choices. In that charged moment, the balance of power shifted. The farmer stood tall, an ancient spirit of resilience rising from the ashes of doubt. With motion almost primal, he lunged forward, the pitchfork poised to strike. He roared, determination echoing through the fields. The bandit stumbled, feet caught in the dirt, and in that fleeting moment, the farmer's fury became a fire that ignited hope not just for him, but for all whose stories were intertwined with the land. The bandit turned, fleeing back toward the rising path from which they came, galloping away in sheer terror. The farmer didn't pursue. He merely watched with a hard-won triumph that pulsed through his chest. The sound of the hooves faded, and pure silence enveloped him, wrapping around him like a warm blanket after a bitter winter. Exhaustion surged through him, but with it, a whirlpool of relief and pride. He had stood firm, faced chaos, and emerged stronger. All around him, the golden hues of the setting sun danced on the rich browns of the tilled earth, transforming the battlefield back into a sanctuary. Gripping the pitchfork in his calloused hands, the farmer let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. It was a battle not fought for accolades but for dignity, for the legacy passed down from fathers and mothers who had walked this land before him. For every ear of corn that swayed in the gentle breeze, for every patch of soil that fed a hungry mouth. As the stars began to dot the inky sky, he walked back to the barn, heart swelling with purpose. The echoes of the confrontation would linger, stories of bravery to be passed on, seeds of courage sown deep into the fabric of the community. In the days that followed, word of the confrontation spread through the valley, whispered in hushed tones of admiration. The farmer transformed from a simple laborer into a symbol of defiance, a beacon for those who felt powerless. His tale became part of the folklore, teaching others that courage comes in many forms, sometimes dressed in the rugged clothing of a farmer. More than that, he learned a truth that shifted the very ground beneath him. Vulnerability does not mean defeat. Rather, when harnessed, it can become a powerful ally that ignites the fire of resilience. Each day, as he toiled under the sun, he carried that fierce lesson like a shield. Wherever uncertainty lurked, he was ready to confront it. The memories of that fateful afternoon echoed through the fields, whispered among the rustling leaves. And somewhere in the canopy of stars, the spirits of farmers past rallied around him, proud of what he had become. They had tilled the earth, faced storms, and now, through him, they lived again, to remind every soul that when faced with the darkness, one must have the courage to stand against it. Through hard work, determination, and a pitchfork clenched tightly in his hands, he had turned the tables that day, not just on the bandits, but on doubt itself. And so he tilled his fields with renewed vigor, every furrow dug echoing the spirit of resistance, resilience against adversity, and the unfading strength of the human heart. With each dawn that broke over his land, he looked to the horizon, knowing that whatever storms lay ahead, he would face them with a fierce heart undaunted, unyielding, forever a guardian of his legacy. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting a warm, golden hue across the vast fields of ripening corn. A farmer, Callum, knelt beside the rows he had tended for years, hands caked in rich, dark soil. It was the end of a long day's work, the kind that left his muscles aching but his spirit soaring. Each stalk of corn represented countless hours of sweat, determination, and a deep love for the land. But then a rumble disturbed the tranquility, the distant sound of hooves, fast and unforgiving. Callum's heart dropped. He stood, wiping his brow, his instincts snapping into overdrive. In the distance, he could make out three dark figures riding swiftly toward him, silhouetted against the fading sun. The unmistakable weight of dread settled on his chest. Bandits. He had heard the stories from neighbors in the tavern, the horror tales of ruthless men snatching livelihoods and sowing chaos. They came with weapons drawn, seeking easy prey. Callum's mind raced. He couldn't let that happen to him. He had fought too hard for this land to let it slip away in an instant. As the shapes approached, he could see their sneering faces, their eyes glinting with malice. They were hungry wolves, and he was an isolated sheep. A rush of adrenaline surged through him, propelling him to action. He dropped the hoe and sprinted toward the barn, heart hammering like a war drum. Inside the barn, he took a moment to breathe, scanning the familiar space filled with tools, old wooden beams, and the comforting smell of hay. He grabbed his old pitchfork, its metal tines gleaming dully in the dim light. This was no ordinary farm tool today. It was his shield and spear against the coming storm. With a heavy grip, Callum charged back outside just as the bandits reined in their horses, laughing arrogantly as they dismounted. One of them taunted, brandishing a blade that caught the last rays of sun. But Callum stood tall, his determination flickering like a flame. "Get off my land," he shouted, the words booming with a strength he didn't know he possessed. This was his moment, a turning point, and he felt the fire ignite within him. The lead bandit scoffed, stepping forward, but before he could draw his weapon, Callum lunged. He aimed the pitchfork directly at the bandit's horse, its hooves stirring up a cloud of dust. The animal reared up, instinctively balking at the sight of the aggressive farmer. With a wild twist, the bandit lost his balance and crashed to the ground, hitting the dirt with a hollow thud. Surprise flickered across the faces of the other two bandits. This wasn't how their perfect plan was supposed to unfold. In that split second, their bravado faltered, but it wasn't over. The remaining bandits roared in anger, brandishing their weapons and advancing with fury. Callum felt the weight of fear settle back around him, but he pushed it aside. And right there, he refused to let the gloom take hold. He brought the pitchfork up forth, ready to fight. The two bandits rushed in, blades flashing. Callum ducked and weaved, feeling the air slice past him as he narrowly avoided a blow. He was no trained warrior, but years of working the land had built up strength and agility. Every movement felt instinctive, as if the earth beneath him was whispering guidance. He jabbed at the nearest bandit's horse, pushing the animal sideways, and the rider lost his footing, crashing hard against the ground. The sound of flesh meeting earth echoed, a sound of both fear and fate. The third bandit, seeing his companions fall around him, decided to retreat, but Callum wasn't done. He bellowed, feeling a surge of power as he charged forward again. Fueled by adrenaline and righteous indignation, he thrust the pitchfork toward the last bandit, who was scrambling to get back on his horse. The tines caught the hem of the bandit's trousers, yanking him back down. He cried out, eyes wide with shock, but Callum didn't relent. This was the turning of the tide. Time slowed as Callum stood over the fallen bandit, the pitchfork poised, breathing heavily, heart racing. The bandit's eyes filled with panic, realizing the true consequence of their arrogance. "Please." "We didn't mean to," he stammered, words spilling out in desperation. Callum shouted, his voice deep and resonant, echoing across the fields. The bandit scrambled to his feet, filled with raw fear. No longer the predator, he was merely a cornered animal, and with a swift turn, he threw himself back onto his horse. Within moments, he was galloping away, clouds of dust spiraling behind him. Callum watched, chest heaving, the adrenaline beginning to fade. As the hooves of the fleeing bandits faded into the distance, silence enveloped him. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, the echoes of the battle still ringing in his ears. Relief washed over him like cool water after a long, harrowing drought. He lowered the pitchfork, his hands shaking slightly. The sun was now dipping below the treetops, a brilliant orange glow casting the landscape in a warm embrace. The wind whispered through the fields, soft and soothing, promising that everything would be all right. But as his heart rate slowed, he felt something else, a powerful sense of transformation. In that moment, he wasn't just a farmer. He was a warrior, a guardian of his land, a man who had faced fear directly and emerged victorious. The battle wasn't just physical, it had ignited a fire within. The farmer had turned the tables not just on the bandits but on himself. Word spread quickly through the nearby village of Callum's bravery. Children whispered his story in awe at the dinner table, mothers whispered prayers of gratitude, and fathers nodded their heads, marveling at the farmer's unexpected strength. Over the weeks that followed, Callum found himself at the heart of renewed camaraderie. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down came together, sharing resources and stories. They reinforced their fences, banded together for protection, and vowed to keep their land safe from those who preyed on the innocent. Callum became a symbol of resilience. He held meetings in the village square, sharing tactics of self-defense and drawing strength from the community. He created a sense of safety, inspiring others to stand tall in the face of adversity. The horror of that fateful day had turned into a rallying cry for unity. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues, Callum gathered a few brave souls to practice self-defense. With each jab and parry, with each tumble, the villagers found confidence, breathing life back into their spirits. "Remember," Callum said, sweat glistening on his brow, "strength doesn't only come from what you wield, it comes from knowing you are not alone." But there was more. Callum marveled at how fear had transformed, slipping from something dark and suffocating to something empowering. It taught him how fragile yet powerful their lives were. They were all in this together. They were stewards of their land, protectors of their home. Months went by, seasons changed, and Callum continued to work the fields, his demeanor one of quiet watchfulness. He cultivated not just crops but relationships. The tales of his confrontation with the bandits became lore, a reminder that courage is born from struggle. Then, one late afternoon, while gathering eggs from the coop, Callum saw a flicker of movement at the edge of the fields. A figure was lurking. His heart raced as he grabbed the pitchfork and moved stealthily toward the shadows. Each inch felt like a journey through the unknown. As he approached, he recognized the figure, a bandit, one of the trio from months before. Fear and recognition painted their faces as they locked eyes. The bandit's stance was no longer menacing. Instead, there was desperation. "Please," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "I was wrong. I left the gang. I've lost everything. I came back to warn you." In that moment, Callum felt the rising tide of emotion. Anger flared, memories of the chaos flooding back, but he tempered it with restraint. This man was now vulnerable, stripped of bravado, pleading for mercy. Callum thought back to the lessons learned, not just on that fateful day, but through the months of building strength. "I'll listen." Callum's voice was steady, yet the pitchfork hovered in readiness. The bandit nodded vigorously, fear glinting in his eyes. With the sun setting behind them, painting the sky with shades of pink and purple, they spoke. The farmer's pitchfork resting firmly on the damp earth, they shared stories of loss, fear, and the temptation of a dark path. By the end of the dusk, a cautious alliance formed, and as Callum led the former bandit toward the village, prepared to introduce him to the others, he realized the true power of transformation. They were all products of their choices, connected deeply by their experiences. The bonds forged in conflict now had the potential to reshape the future. Back in the village, the farmers gathered around, eyes wide in disbelief. Callum stood tall, holding the pitchfork in one hand and a new resolve in the other. "This man was once my enemy, but now he seeks redemption. We need to be stronger than fear, together." That day brought about not just a lesson in courage, but a lesson in compassion and understanding. Together, they tightened their bonds and fortified their resolve. They became a community that would not just withstand the approaching storms, but one that would also reach back towards those lost in darkness. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Callum looked over the fields. The land that had once felt like a battleground now stood as a symbol of strength and unity. Every stalk of corn, every grain of soil whispered the stories of resilience. He felt anchored, connected to the past yet hopeful for the future. In that moment, he realized what had begun as a struggle for survival had blossomed into a tapestry of connection, courage, and resolve. No bandit could steal their spirit, and together, they would rise against any darkness that dared to cross their path. The tables hadn't just turned on the bandits, they had turned on themselves, allowing the light of redemption to illuminate the way forward. In the heart of the land, a new story was born, echoing through the vast fields of corn, carried by the whispers of the Winda Testament to fight, to unity, and to the enduring strength of the human spirit. The sun dipped low over the rolling hills, casting long shadows across the fields, when the faint sound of hooves began to intrude upon the evening stillness. A farmer named Eli squatted among his rows of corn, hands deep in the rich soil. He had just finished a long day of toil, the kind that left your muscles weary but your spirit soaring. Nothing felt more satisfying than watching the fruits of your labor spring to life, reaching toward the heavens. But then the sound of galloping hooves reached his ears, and in that moment his heart sank. The rhythmic pounding was different, more aggressive, more chaotic. Eli rose to his feet, squinting into the distance, and a knot tightened in his stomach as the silhouettes of three riders began to take shape against the stunning backdrop of the setting sun. They weren't travelers, they were bandits. Eli had heard the stories whispers in the marketplace of farmers losing everything, homes left in smoke and ash. The very thought twisted his gut. He couldn't let them take what he had worked so hard to build. Fear clutched at him, but instinct took over. He couldn't run. He couldn't walk away from the land that was his inheritance, a sacred trust that had been passed down through generations. With urgency pumping through his veins, he raced toward the barn. Each stride felt both desperate and resolute. Inside, the scent of hay mixed with the metallic tang of tools long forgotten. He scanned the space, and his eyes landed on an old pitchfork leaning against the wall. It was more than just a tool. In that moment, it was his lifeline. He gripped it tightly, the worn wood grounding him as he stepped back outside. The bandits had dismounted, their laughter echoing eerily across the fields, a sharp sound taunting him. "Look at this pathetic farmer." One of them mocked, his eyes glinting with malevolence. Eli didn't reply. Instead, he steadied himself and raised the pitchfork high. He shouted, voice strong against the catcalls of the intruders. In that heartbeat, a flicker of something powerful ignited within him. This was not just a battle for crops. This was a fight for his dignity, his family legacy. The lead bandit stepped forward, a wicked grin on his face. Without thinking, Eli lunged. He aimed the pitchfork directly at the lead bandit's horse. The animal reared back, startled, and the bandit lost his balance, tumbling into the dirt. The laughter ceased, replaced by an air of disbelief. Just as surprise etched itself across their faces, Eli seized his moment. With adrenaline surging, he charged forward again. The two remaining bandits exchanged frantic glances. They had underestimated him, and now they were on uncertain ground. Fear, a sneaky emotion, began to creep into their bravado. One of the bandits lunged at him with a dagger, but Eli sidestepped, channeling years of hard labor into every movement. He thrust the pitchfork forward again, narrowly missing the bandit's shoulder but driving it into the ground, planting it firmly as if claiming his ground for all to see. He roared, the words echoing through the dusk. The second bandit attempted to catch him from the side, but Eli pivoted, swinging the pitchfork like a seasoned warrior. It caught the bandit off guard, knocking him backward. He stumbled, crashing onto the ground, the thud reverberating through the evening air. The lead bandit had regained his footing, wild anger exploding in his chest. He yelled, charging toward Eli with a ferocious swing. But Eli stood firm, instinct kicking in like a coiled spring, ready to unleash fury. He dodged the attack but felt the whoosh of air pass perilously close to his ear. Eli taunted, adrenaline flooding his senses, every heartbeat hammering with determination. This was no longer about survival. It was a moment of empowerment, a reclaiming of his story against the tide of fear and chaos. The lead bandit faltered for just an instant, doubt creeping in. It was a crucial moment that Eli seized. He surged forward again, thrusting the pitchfork, this time catching the bandit's sleeve and pinning it against the ground. Panic sparked in the bandit's eyes as he fell, clawing at the earth, desperately trying to escape the grip of fear that tightened around him like a noose. Behind him, the other bandit scrambled to his feet but quickly realized the futility of their assault. Two of their own lay sprawled in the dust. Breathless and panicked, the last bandit hesitated. He shouted, masking fear with bravado. Eli gripped the pitchfork tighter, sweat dripping down his face. "Leave now while you still can." His voice boomed with conviction, shaking both the ground beneath them and the courage within him. With a frantic look, the last bandit made a choice. He turned and fled, mounting his horse, heart racing, the sounds of hoofbeats pounding as he raced away. The other two bandits followed, scrambling to escape the storm that had suddenly turned against them. Silence enveloped the farmland as the last echoes of their shouts faded into the night. Eli stood in the aftermath, breathless, heart pounding like a drum celebrating victory. The pitchfork trembled slightly in his grip, a testament to the struggle that had just unfolded. A wave of relief washed over him. He had faced the fear that had haunted him. He had stood his ground, fought fiercely for what he believed was right, and he had emerged victorious. The fields that were once filled with dread now shimmered with a newfound hope, illuminated by the last rays of sunlight. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Eli felt a profound shift within. He would never forget the moment he had turned fear on its head, transforming it into strength. He knew then that he was more than just a farmer. He was a defender of his land, a protector of his home. News spread like wildfire through the village. Whispers of Eli's courage echoed from home to home, legends taking root in the hearts of those who heard it. People came out to celebrate, sharing stories of triumph and resilience. Children played games, mimicking their hero with stick-stern swords, imagining themselves in his place. Over the weeks that followed, Eli found himself immersed not only in his fields, but also in the revived spirit of the community. The townsfolk began to band together, reinforcing fences, pooling resources, and sharing the burden of tending to their land. They became a united front against the lingering threat of banditry. At town meetings, Eli shared strategies on defense and cooperation. "We have to look out for one another," he said, his voice steady, showing them all that fear gives rise to vulnerability, but strength comes from unity. The more they practiced standing tall, the more confidence bloomed amongst them. They learned from each other, drawing courage like water from a deep well. And as the seasons shifted, so did the atmosphere around the village. What once felt like whispers of dread morphed into shouts of determination and resilience. Then, one day, as he worked in the fields, delighting in the vibrant petals of his crops, Eli spotted movement at the edge of his land. He felt the familiar knot of apprehension tighten in his stomach. Could it be more bandits? Or perhaps trouble had found him again? He held his breath and watched closely. The figure moved cautiously. No weapons were drawn, no loud cries. Eli's heart raced as he approached slowly, ready to defend his territory. As he drew nearer, the outline of the figure began to clarify. It was the lead bandit, the arrogant man who had once scoffed at him. Eli quickly grabbed his pitchfork, trained and ready, not entirely trusting this unexpected visitor. The bandit was hunched over, dirt smudged across his face, clothes tattered and torn. When their eyes met, Eli felt a rush of indignation mixed with disbelief. He demanded, gripping the pitchfork tightly. The bandit's eyes darted nervously, the bravado he once exuded now evaporated like the morning dew. "Please, I'm here to talk," the bandit gasped, desperation lining his voice. "I'm not with them anymore. I came to warn you." Eli's heart flip-flopped. Could he trust this man, the one who had threatened everything he held dear? But there was something pitiful in the bandit's eyes, a vulnerability that spoke of true fear. He shot back, ready for any tricks. "Because I've lost everything. I was hungry, I was desperate," the bandit stammered, his voice trembling. "I never meant for things to go so far. I want to make it right." Eli felt the tension in his body ease slightly. He was on the precipice of a decision. Revenge could easily have taken hold. But a new understanding washed over him. The tempest of desperation could lead anyone down a dark path. This could become a lesson for both of them. After a long pause, Eli lowered the pitchfork, weighing his options. "All right, if you want to help, prove it," he finally said, his heart racing at the thought of trusting a former enemy. They walked side by side back to the village, an unusual alliance forming as Eli cautiously led the way. The villagers gathered, eyes wide as they saw the bandit alongside their defender. Whispers filled the air, some uncertain, some skeptical. One voice called out, a mix of anger and confusion. Eli raised a hand, trying to quell the unrest. "Give him a chance. He may know more about their plans than we do. We can't let fear dictate our decisions." And just like that, the villagers took a breath, uncertainty lingering like an uninvited guest. They listened as the bandit recounted tales of the gang's plans, revealing deeper roots of chaos that stretched far beyond what they had imagined. What began as mistrust gradually shifted, hearts opening as they understood the motivation behind his words. Bonds began to form, and for the first time, the fear that had long hovered over the village started to dissipate. Eli watched, emboldened by the spirit of unity unraveling before him. With the strength of community behind them, they banded together, not only to secure the land but to watch each other's backs. They organized patrols and reinforced their defenses, creating an intricate web of safety woven with trust and vigilance. As they prepared for the looming threat, the stories of transformation rippled through the fields like an unseen current. The farmer who had once feared the unknown had become a pillar of strength, built upon the ashes of his fight. The bandit stood among them, no longer an enemy but a symbol of redemption, an opportunity to reshape destinies. In the end, Eli learned that courage manifests in many forms. It may come from wielding a pitchfork or offering forgiveness when it feels impossible. His story was no longer just about turning the tables on bandits. It was about building bridges where walls could easily have been erected. United, they were not only defenders of their land but unwilling to let fear dictate their fate. The sun set that evening, a stunning tapestry of colors painting the sky above the village. Eli stood amid the fields, a quiet smile gracing his lips. Hope and resilience bloomed in the hearts of those around him. Together, they transformed a story of struggle into one of strength, an enduring legacy that would echo many generations into the future. In a world that could turn hostile with the swift winds of change, they stood as a testament to the unwavering strength of unity, proving that sometimes it takes a whisper of hope to turn the storm into a gentle breeze. Together, they forged ahead, not just as farmers but as a community, eager to rise with every dawn, ready to greet whatever came next. The sun was just setting, casting a warm golden light over the fields, when a farmer named Eli felt something shift in the air. He was knee-deep in corn stalks, the rhythmic sound of rustling leaves calming his spirit after a long day of hard work. But suddenly, that peace shattered like glass. The distant sound of galloping hooves clawed at his senses, urgent and chaotic, slicing through the tranquil evening. Eli straightened up, wiping sweat from his brow, and squinted toward the horizon. 3 dark figures on horseback appeared, bearing down on him like a storm. A surge of panic clawed at his chest. Bandits. The stories whispered in the village swirled in his mind. Farmers attacked, families terrorized. He couldn't allow this to happen to him. His heart pounded like a drum, primal instincts kicking in, bringing fear and determination to the surface. The menacing laughter of the bandits pierced the air as they drew closer, their eyes glinting with malicious intent. "Look at the farmer," one shouted, mocking, a cruel sneer spreading across his face. Those words ignited something deep within Eli. Dreams of loss swirled around him. His land wasn't just earth, it was his legacy. He bellowed, finding courage in the very act of defiance. He sprinted toward the barn, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Inside, he seized an old pitchfork, its metal tines gleaming dully in the barn's fading light. It was a simple tool, but today it was his weapon of choice, a symbol of resistance. As he stepped outside, holding the pitchfork high, the bandits laughed louder, their arrogance like a red flag. They didn't see it coming. With trembling determination, Eli prepared himself, and as they dismounted, he charged forward, aiming the pitchfork at the leading bandit's horse. The animal reared back, startled, and in that moment the bandit tumbled to the ground, rolling away in shock. The laughter faded, replaced by confusion. Eli had seized a flicker of opportunity, and the taste of defiance fueled his resolve. Before the bandits could recover, Eli thrust the pitchfork again, targeting the second bandit. He ducked and weaved between them, nimble as a dancer and fierce like a cornered animal. Those words echoed in his mind like a battle cry. As he sidestepped another attack, adrenaline surged, each moment feeling alive with possibility. He'd spent years toiling under the sun, planting seeds of hope and struggle, and he wasn't about to let greed uproot them. The third bandit lunged, brandishing a dagger, but Eli pivoted smoothly, the pitchfork whirling like a windmill. He knocked the weapon away, metal clashing against metal, a sharp ring that rattled his bones. Time slowed. Eli moved like water, darting forward, thrusting the pitchfork once more, this time catching the second bandit square in the chest. The man stumbled back, fear flickering in his eyes as he lost his balance and fell. In those moments, what had once seemed hopeless transformed into action fueled by raw courage. The lead bandit, now alone and cornered, felt the grip of panic tight. He shouted, voice trembling with diminished bravado, a realization dawning in his eyes. Eli's heart raced. This was not just a fight for his crops, this was a fight for respect. He called, his voice firm and unyielding. He brandished the pitchfork, a warrior standing tall against the tide of despair. The bandit, eyes wide, turned to flee, scrambling back to his horse. With a last frantic kick, the remaining 2 bandits followed suit, galloping away into the trees, their laughter replaced by desperate shouts of fear. Eli stood breathing heavily, the adrenaline beginning to fade. Silence enveloped him, thick and palpable. He had fought back against the storm, and in that moment he felt alive. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow over the fields, Eli lowered his pitchfork, trembling slightly as a wave of relief washed over him. Victory tasted sweet, yet humbling. He had turned the tables, standing firm against those who thought they could take everything away. The fields were alive with color, whispering tales of resilience. Word spread quickly through the village, fueled by awe and admiration. Eli became a symbol, a beacon of courage. Neighbors who had once walked with heads down now lifted their chins, empowered by the tale of the farmer who faced the bandits and won. They gathered, sharing stories of their own moments of defiance, remembering family legacies that had been built on strength. In the following weeks, the community began to rally. They reinforced their fences and established watch patrols, transforming fear into a shield of unity. In those gatherings, Eli stood at the center, a fierce advocate for their shared safety. "We must band together," he'd say, feeling the warmth of connection grow. The rhythm of life shifted as the village embraced that spirit of resilience. Kids played warrior games, reenacting Eli's brave stand. Fantasy spun from the fabric of courage. In those moments, laughter blossomed like wildflowers, pushing back against the shadows of the past. Eli found himself immersed in the communal spirit. As he toiled in his fields, he saw the faces of his neighbors working beside him, each one sharing a smile, a nod, a gesture of solidarity. They were no longer isolated. They were a family bound by unwavering support, not just in farming but in life. Then came a day when the winds changed again. One afternoon, while checking the fences, Eli spotted a figure lurking at the edge of the fields. An icy knot formed in his stomach. Had the bandits returned? Heart pounding, he approached cautiously, the memories of the ambush rising within him. As he drew closer, a familiar face came into view, one of the bandits, the lead one he had fought against. Eli's hand tensed around the pitchfork as he prepared to defend himself yet again. The man looked different now, disheveled and shaken, fear etched on his face. Eli took a deep breath, grounding himself against the rising tide of anger. He demanded, voice steady, "Please, I came to warn you," the bandit stammered, his eyes darting nervously. "The gang is planning to return." The words hung in the air, causing Eli's heart to race. Could he trust this man? Memories of the ambush flooded his mind, but there was something raw in the bandit's expression, desperation laced with genuine fear. Eli asked, battling skepticism. "I lost everything," the bandit replied, voice trembling. "I realized I made terrible choices and I can't go back. I want to help you." There was a long pause, the weight of decision pressing down on Eli. Rage and compassion battled within him. Could he extend a hand where he felt only betrayal had arisen? In that moment, he chose courage once again, not just to fight, but to forgive. "All right," Eli said, lowering the pitchfork slightly. "But prove it. Lead me to their camp." Together, they walked toward town, and Eli's heart pounded with uncertainty. As they approached the village, the air buzzed with whispers. Eyebrows lifted, gazes narrowed. Villagers assembled, confusion and skepticism swirling around them like a storm cloud. Eli cleared his throat, standing tall. "Listen up," he called out, trying to quell the murmurs. "This man has come to warn us." Gasps rippled through the crowd, doubt etched on countless faces, but Eli carried a flame of conviction. He knows their plans. The crowd stilled, attention shifting to the bandit, whose posture had sharpened, clarity rising as he spoke. "I was once one of them," he began, sharing tales of betrayal and desperation, the very choices that had landed him in darkness. It was a story that pulled at their hearts, the threads of understanding weaving through the crowd. What began as fear transformed into resolve. "Together," the bandit continued, "we can stop them." With Eli standing beside him, the villagers began to rally. They discussed strategies, forming plans to fortify their defenses and protect their community. Eli felt the power of unity envelop them. In the following days, the village came alive with preparation. They organized patrols, built stronger fences, and set alerts throughout the land, all fueled by the determination to protect their homes. It was a transformation that pulsed with hope, forging connections that were deeper than fear. Finally, the day arrived when they caught wind of the bandits approaching again. Eli stood firm at the forefront, the pitchfork heavy in his hands but lighter with every shared glance among his fellow villagers. Their eyes met, a tapestry of unity woven from some greater than its parts. What had unfolded before them wasn't just a confrontation, it was a testament to their resilience. When the bandits rushed toward their fields, it wasn't just Eli standing there. It was every farmer, every laborer, every survivor who had dared to reclaim their narrative. When the bandits charged, Eli felt the heartbeat of determination thunder within him. He raised the pitchfork, bringing forth a symphony of unity and action. He shouted, a rallying cry that echoed against the hills, and as they faced off, the tide of desperation shifted. The once feared bandits were no longer the hunters. United behind their farmland, Eli and the villagers transformed their fear into action, standing back to back like warriors of old. With focused determination, they charged back with strength, mounting an unpredictable defense. The pitchfork flashed in Eli's hands, But it wasn't the only weapon at play. Each villager brought their own form of courage, gathering their strength and resolve to rise against the chaos that had tried to unravel them. The clash was thunderous, a storm of dust and fury as they fought together to protect what mattered most. And just as darkness had threatened to consume them, they emerged victorious once more, the bandits fleeing, shadows retreating like a bad dream. Silence fell over the fields once again, but this time it was different. The air was charged with triumph, with love for the land they had defended. Eli glanced around, meeting the eyes of his neighbor's strength and unity blooming within their very souls. As the sun set that evening, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold, Eli knew this was not the end of their story. They had turned the tables together, forging not just a defense against the darkness, but a radiant tapestry of hope. In a world that could twist into shadows, they stood resilient, proving that together, they were a force of nature. The farmer who once stood alone now led a powerful community, their hearts intertwined like the roots of the very land they defended. Days turned into months, yet the bond they had formed endured, deeper than ever before. The fields became a sanctuary, a testament to courage that flourished like wildflowers after a storm. Eli walked through them often, feeling the whispers of the past blend with the bright promise of tomorrow. Each stalk of corn told a story of redemption, resistance, and an everlasting light against the darkness. Through it all, Eli rose not only as a farmer but as a guardian, a figure who had faced despair and breathed life into hope, proving that no matter how dark the journey may seem together, they could always turn the tables. The sun hung low in the sky, a fiery orb casting long shadows across the fields, when Eli noticed something strange on the edge of his farm. He was tilling his land, sweat dripping down his brow, the familiar rhythm of his labor grounding him. But then a disquieting sound broke the harmony, the distant thud of galloping hooves echoing against the gentle whispers of the wind. His heart quickened. It was a sound that broke the tranquil pulse of his evening. He dropped the hoe and squinted toward the horizon. 3 dark figures on horseback were headed straight toward him, and as they drew closer, dread twisted in his gut. Bandits. The word resonated, flooding his mind with horrifying tales he had heard in the village. Farmers losing their homes, families torn apart. Fear gripped him, not just fear of the unknown, but a primal urge to protect what was his. He backed away instinctively, but then his feet planted firmly in the soil. This land was more than just earth. It was his heritage, a testament to his family's hard work and sacrifice. Eli felt a surge of courage rising within him, stronger than the fear clawing at his insides. He wasn't about to let them take it away. With adrenaline pumping through his veins, Eli raced toward the barn, every step resonating with urgency. Inside, he glanced around, his heart pounding in his chest. The barn was filled with familiar scents, the sweet smell of hay, the metallic tang of tools. His eyes landed on an old pitchfork propped against the wall. It was just a farming tool, worn from years of use, but today it would serve as his weapon, his line of defense. Eli seized the pitchfork, gripping it tightly. He could hear the approaching bandits laughing, cruel sounds that danced through the air, threatening to taint the very essence of his life. As he stepped out of the barn, pitchfork raised, he could see the figures more clearly now. They were rugged, dirty, and brimming with arrogance. They didn't see him as a threat. They saw an easy target. One shouted, his laughter sharp and mocking. Eli's blood boiled, but instead of retreating, he stood tall, planting his feet in the dirt, every ounce of his being rallying behind him. "This is my land," he shouted, his voice echoing across the fields. The lead bandit, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, sneered and approached, brandishing a dagger. "What are you going to do, farmer?" In that heartbeat, everything changed. Eli's fear morphed into determination. He didn't answer, instead he lunged. He aimed the pitchfork directly at the horse's flank, and as the animal startled, the bandit lost his footing, hurling himself sideways and crashing to the ground. The laughter of the remaining 2 bandits faded, shock filling the air. Eli had taken them off guard. He had seized the upper hand. The second bandit rushed toward him, rage fueling his movements, but Eli was ready. He sidestepped with an agility born from years of working the land, thrusting the pitchfork toward his attacker. The metal tines caught the air but didn't hit flesh. Instead, they embedded into the ground, creating a violent thud that echoed around them. Realizing their mistake, the bandits exchanged frantic glances. Panic began to seep into their bravado. Eli felt it too, the power shifting. He couldn't just stand there, he had to keep fighting. With a surge of adrenaline, he planted his feet and advanced, lunging again. "Leave this land," he shouted, surprising even himself with the strength in his voice. The first bandit scrambled to his feet, trying to regain control, but Eli charged forward, driving the pitchfork toward him. The bandit stumbled back, fear now mingling with pure disbelief. With each passing moment, Eli felt confidence surge within him, coursing through his muscles. The farmers had always been resilient against the elements, against the whims of fate. This was just another storm to weather. And now he was the storm. But suddenly, the third bandit, who had been lingering in the shadows, lunged at Eli with a hefty club. Time seemed to stretch as Eli ducked just in time, the club missing his head by mere inches. The rush of air was a reminder of the chaos surrounding him, but he found his footing, shifting dynamics with every heartbeat. He wheeled around, thrusting the pitchfork toward the bandit with the club. This time he aimed higher, narrowly catching the bandit's arm as he raised it to strike again. The man yelped in pain, the wood of the pitchfork thwarting his attack, and as he clutched his injury, Eli could see horror etched across his face. Now with two of them battered and confused, Eli pressed on, the fire of determination blazing in his chest. The leader of the bandits, who had fallen earlier, was starting to rise, scrambling frantically. Eli brandished the pitchfork like a warrior's sword, ready to defend not just the land, but the essence of who he was. Eli shouted again, feeling the power of his words echo through the empty fields. The remaining bandits' eyes widened as fear swallowed their arrogance whole. They had come to rob a farmer, but he was a farmer that wouldn't be broken. With a frantic glance at his comrades, one clutching his arm in pain, the other now stumbling to his feet, the lead bandit made a split-second decision. He turned and bolted for the safety of their horses, urgency overtaking any trace of bravado. The remaining two followed suit, retreating into the shadows from which they had emerged, their threats now nothing more than distant echoes. Eli stood alone, breathless, heart pounding like a war drum. Silence blanketed the land, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. Relief washed over him like a cool breeze on a summer afternoon. He had defended his home, he had turned the tables when faced with overwhelming odds. As the sun descended, Eli lowered the pitchfork, its tines glistening dully in the fading light. He felt changed, emboldened by the struggle. He was no longer just a farmer. Today, he had become a protector, a warrior defending his legacy. Word spread quickly through the village. Whispers of Eli's bravery echoed in the taverns, lighting a fire in the hearts of everyone who heard it. Farmers who once walked with heads bowed now lifted their chins, their eyes gleaming with inspiration. They gathered, sharing tales of their own struggles and victories, each story a thread woven into the fabric of their community. As weeks passed, the village transformed. They banded together, reinforcing their fences and working as a united front. Eli became more than just a farmer. He was a leader, a guiding force, using his experience to foster strength among the villagers. Meetings were held under the old oak tree, where they discussed strategies, pooled resources, and shared stories of defiance. Together, they trained, finding strength in one another. Children practiced wielding wooden sticks, mimicking their hero, while mothers and fathers worked side by side, building stronger homes and safer fields. The village pulsed with new energy, laughter echoing through the once peaceful farmstead. Every time Eli looked out at his fields, he saw triumph, not just over the bandits, but over fear itself. The land that had felt vulnerable now stood as a fortress of resilience. The bandits had ignited a spark that ignited unity among the people, their stories becoming threads that bound them. But just as the winds of change began to settle, Eli noticed a figure lingering on the horizon one late afternoon while gathering eggs from the coop. His heart sank. Could it be more bandits? As he squinted, he recognized an unsettling resemblance in the shape of the lead bandit returning. Fear sliced through him, but more than that, The resolve to protect his family and land steadied his hands around the pitchfork. He approached cautiously, determination hardening within him. He demanded, voice firm but carrying a slight tremor of uncertainty. The bandit, disheveled and desperate, raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I come not to fight," he breathed, his voice shaky. "I come to warn you." Eli's mind raced. Could he trust this man, the very one who had tried to invade his home? But the change in the bandit's demeanor struck a chord. He looked lost, scared, filled with remorse. "Prove it," Eli replied, lowering the pitchfork slightly but remaining vigilant. The two men walked back to the village, a quiet tension humming between them. As they arrived, the townsfolk gathered, eyes wide with disbelief. Whispers filled the air, questions, uncertainty, fear. One villager called out, skepticism resounding. Eli stepped forward, heart pounding. "He came to warn us. We know what we can do together." The bandit began to share what he knew, revealing plans that sent shivers through the crowd. The hope that flickered in Eli's heart began to expand into something greater, an understanding that they could face whatever was thrown at them if they united. Every word exchanged became a thread weaving their destinies together. It was a bridge built on understanding, on the promise that true strength lay not just in standing alone but in standing together. Over the following days, the villagers prepared for the impending threat. They built barricades and drilled defensive maneuvers, ensuring no one would be caught off guard again. Eli took charge, leading the way, driven by purpose. The day of reckoning approached, the air thick with anticipation. Eli stood at the forefront, a sturdy pitchfork in hand but with a community at his back. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, he felt the power of unity radiating around him. Then they came, bandits charging like a tempest across the plains, their shouts piercing the air. Eli's heart raced, not from fear but from the resolve coursing through his veins. He shouted to his neighbors, locking eyes with each of them. As the bandits approached, Eli felt the essence of his struggle blossom into hope. He aimed the pitchfork as they stormed in, but this time it wasn't a solo battle. It was a chorus of unity rising together. The pitchfork met the ground with a determined thud, but it was supported by the strength of dozens more. Each villager wielded their tools, a shovel, a sickle, anything that could stand as a shield. They charged together, each soul bound by purpose, ready to defend their home. What unfolded was a testament to resilience. The clash of metal echoed, cries of triumph mingling with gasps of surprise. The bandits, once filled with swagger, quickly realized they were outmatched in sheer determination. They stumbled, lost in the frantic energy of the villagers, retreating once more into the shadows. As the dust settled and the sun dipped low, Eli stood among his neighbors, triumph coursing through their veins. They had not only defended their home, they had become something greater, a family forged in adversity. In that moment, Eli understood the true meaning of courage. It was not just about facing danger. It was about standing united, finding strength in the unlikely bonds they had formed. The tales they would tell shifted from the fears of the past to stories of bravery, love, and unwavering loyalty. Days turned into weeks, and the scars of battle eventually faded, but the strength of community remained. Eli witnessed transformations in the hearts of his neighbors, women and men who once walked in fear now radiating resilience. The fields quietly thrived, and laughter filled the air like blossoms in spring. Eli walked among them, feeling the whispers of the past wrapped in the promise of tomorrow. He had fought not just for the land but for the future. Each stalk of corn, each budding flower represented what they had overcome together. As the sun set over the horizon one last time, Eli gazed out at the fields much more than soil. They were a tapestry of triumph woven from resilience, love, and an unwavering spirit that could and would stand against any darkness. In that moment, he knew they had turned the tables, not just against the bandits, but against fear itself, rising not just to survive, but to flourish. This was their story, a story of courage, unity, and the tenacity of the human spirit that would echo through the ages, as vibrant as the colors of a sunset. Eli stood in the golden light of dawn, breathing in the scent of rich earth and dew-kissed grass. Today, he had big plans to expand his fields and maybe even buy more livestock. But as he surveyed the horizon, a movement caught his eye, something ill-fitting in the tranquil landscape. Three dark figures mounted on horseback edged closer, riding with a reckless abandon that sent a jolt of fear coursing through him. As they rode into the clearing, a knot of dread twisted in his gut. Bandits. The stories had spread through every village, each tale darker than the last, farmers losing their livelihoods, families torn apart by greed. Eli had always dreaded this moment. Could that dark fate befall him? Heart racing, he dropped the hoe he was holding, instincts kicking in. He hadn't come this far to let his hard work slip away at the hands of a few ruthless men. As they drew near, laughter bubbled from their lips, sharp and mocking. "Look at this little farmer," one of them shouted, a wild grin plastered across his face. Eli felt a cold sweat trickle down his spine, but as fear bubbled up, something else ignited an unquenchable fire of defiance. He shouted, his voice booming across the field, surprising even himself. The three men halted, the expressions on their faces shifting from amusement to contempt. "Is that so? What are you going to do, little farmer?" One queried mockingly, drawing closer. Steeling himself, Eli sprinted to the barn. The robust wooden structure loomed ahead, a sanctuary filled with the tools of his labor. Inside, the sun streamed through the gaps in the boards, illuminating his pitchfork like a beacon of hope. He seized it, the familiar weight feeling grounding in his hand. As he burst back outside, the bandits were dismounting. "What's he going to do?" They laughed. Eli stood firm, pitchfork raised, heart racing, setting the stage for an unexpected confrontation. "You don't belong here," he commanded once more, every word infused with resolve. The lead bandit's sneer faltered just for a moment, and in that blink, Eli lunged forward, aiming for the first bandit's horse. The animal reared, eyes wide with fear. The bandit lost his grip, tumbling onto the ground. Laughter faded, replaced with shock. The second bandit lunged, dagger drawn and aimed at Eli's chest. Instinctively, Eli sidestepped, the blade whisking past him like a whisper. Without thinking, he swung the pitchfork hard, striking the second bandit squarely in the shoulder. A gasp escaped the man's lips as he stumbled back, panic igniting. "Run, Kyle!" The lead bandit barked, eyes now wide with dread. He watched as his companions fell into disarray before he turned to face Eli, who felt the rush of adrenaline pouring through his veins. This fight wasn't just about defense, it was about reclaiming his space and his spirit. Eli roared, brandishing the pitchfork like a knight with a sword. The lead bandit hesitated, mouth twisting into a snarl. He screamed before stumbling back toward his horse, fear breaking through his bravado. Eli felt a blaze of victory, but the leader jerked back. In a last-ditch effort, he lunged for Eli, dagger aimed at his heart. But Eli was ready. He pivoted just in time, thrusting the pitchfork forward, the tines catching the bandit's arm, sending him spiraling into the dirt. The sound of flesh meeting the ground echoed in Eli's ears like a reverberating drum. The two other bandits, realizing their boss was down and out, quickly scrambled to escape, abandoning their leader. Eli stood triumphant, shaking from adrenaline, the pitchfork still firmly in his grip. As the bandits fled, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing Eli in warm light, illuminating his victory. But that sun, once brilliant, suddenly felt dim. Shadows stretched across the fields, ominous and silently creeping closer. Victory had never felt so fragile. Anxiety fluttered in his chest as he turned to face the downed bandit. "Get up," he commanded, eyes narrowed. The lead bandit lay on the ground, pain etched across his face. He spat, still fueled by anger. "I want to know why you came here," Eli replied, stepping closer, adrenaline giving way to a resolute determination. The bandit, his breath coming in ragged gasps, shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting. "It's just what we do, farmer." Eli challenged, his voice steady. This was more than a confrontation. It was a moment that could reshape the future. The bandit glared up at Eli. "Nothing matters to you." Each word sliced deeper, revealing a truth Eli had long known. A system that preyed on the weak and left desperation in its wake. But he wasn't going to let it end here. "If I spare you, then you need to help me." The bandit's expression shifted, surprise breaking through the anger. "Help, because you'll have a choice," Eli replied, heart racing. You can choose to go back and regroup your gang with better intentions, or you can stay here and be a part of something different. Before the bandit could respond, a shadow flickered from behind Eli. From the corner of his eye, he spotted movement. A figure was watching them from the edge of the trees, eyes glinting with malice. Panic surged within him. Eli shouted, realizing it was a second wave of bandits preparing to ambush him from behind. The bandit on the ground scrambled, eyes wide with fear, but Eli sprang into action, shifting his stance, the pitchfork raised and ready. But instead of freezing, the new bandit charged right at Eli, metal glinting in the fading light. The momentum shifted once again, but Eli felt a rush of clarity settle around him. This wasn't just a fight for his farm. It was a fight to turn the tide on a cycle of violence that had plagued the land for too long. Eli shouted, adrenaline surging as he prepared to defend his home once more. The new bandit lunged, and Eli sidestepped, swinging the pitchfork with precision. This time, the thrust found its mark, hitting the bandit in the side. He stumbled, eyes wide with shock, and Eli took the moment to his advantage, rallying his courage like a shield. But as he turned back to the ground, the lead bandit had regained his footing and drawn his dagger again, and Eli found himself outnumbered. The lead bandit shouted, shaking off the pain and rising once more. The tension mounted, the air crackling with a foreboding energy. The bandit charged at Eli, knife glinting under the lowering sun. But beneath that panic was a thread of resolve stirring deep within Eli. He lunged forward yet again, using every ounce of cunning and strength, catching the second bandit off guard. With a sharp jab, he thrust the pitchfork, the sound of impact ringing through the air like a battle cry. Just then, the surrounding trees rustled ominously. Eli could feel the presence of more figures lurking, menacing shadows watching, waiting for their moment. It felt as though darkness loomed like a storm on the horizon. Eli's heart raced as he faced them down, a flicker of uncertainty threatening to crack his fierce determination. Could he truly turn the tables again? But he wouldn't go down without a fight. He took a deep breath, narrowing his focus, steeling his resolve like a warrior preparing for the battle of his life. Then, in a startling twist, the ground beneath him began to tremble. A distant rumble grew louder, echoing like thunder across the fields, shaking the very earth where he stood. Eli hesitated, confusion slicing through his instincts. Suddenly, a team of riders burst from behind the trees. They were not bandits but other farmers, allies who had heard his pleas echoing through the valley. This wasn't just the turning point. This was the beginning of something grand. They charged in with bowling shouts, their horses moving like a wave crashing against the shore, and Eli felt hope surging within him again. Together, they formed an unyielding line, a barricade of strength against the chaos that threatened to consume everything he valued. But as they surged forward, the tides of battle shifted dramatically. The lead bandit looked around, his bravado cracking under the pressure, realizing that they were now severely outnumbered. He shouted, panic racing through his voice. The new wave of farmers would not let their moment seize them. Charging forward, they encircled the bandits, eyes filled with righteous fury as Eli stood tall in the center. The winds howled, and the dust kicked up around them, the skies darkening ominously as their confrontation unfolded before them. Eli's heart pounded as he realized that their fight was no longer just about reclaiming his farmland. It was about transforming the cycle of fear into one of strength and unity. But could they truly turn the tables? In the chaos, as the last rays of sunlight flickered, Eli found himself at a crossroads. The fate of his farm, and indeed the fate of everyone around him, hung in the balance. Would they stand together or fall apart? As he prepared for the final confrontation, the ground trembled beneath them, a storm brewing not just in the skies but in the hearts of men. Eli raised his pitchfork high, voice ringing out through the tumult. "This is our land." And in that pivotal moment, everything hung in suspense, the air electric with possibilities, victory or defeat, unity or division, and Eli realized that the battle had just begun. Would they find the strength to protect what was theirs? Or would they succumb to the shadows lurking just beyond the horizon? The answer loomed somewhere in the chaos, waiting to reveal itself when the storm broke.